Well, what have we here? You selling little girls now, Madame Nell? White slavery, huh? Hey, you know how to kiss?
Of course I do. Everybody does.
Now tell me where'd you get those pretty pearly teeth and that beautiful brown hair?
Imagine a young teenager getting groomed by a 29-year-old in a movie, just because of her age. Now, we all know that Hollywood has been full of creeps for longer than I think any of us can remember. Since film stars have existed, there have been famous directors and actors that have done some terrible things towards young girls. And because of the time they lived in, somehow they managed to get away with all of their disturbing behavior. In today's video, we're going to talk about a specific case of a young girl who became very famous for her role as an exploited girl. Her name is Brooke Shields. To begin with, let's just say that Brooke was the victim of a lot of abuse and scandals that surrounded her and a lot of controversy before she was barely even a teenager. And till this day, Brooke Shields is near the top of a very long list filled with victims of creeps in Hollywood. Now, out of all the horrible things she's been through, can we just start and talk about this? I mean, this photo shows her only being 11 months old and was hired for doing a photo shoot for Ivory since, well, by this time she was constantly in front of a camera as a child model, and an extremely successful one at that. Shields then took the next big step and turned her career in modeling into acting. First appearing in a movie called After the Fall, and then landing herself more big roles in Sweet Alice and The Prince of Central Park. And from this came the even bigger controversy. The first scandal surrounding Brooke was a huge movie that she was cast in as the lead role, called Pretty Baby, which was released back in 1978. She was only 12 years old at the time of filming, making her not even a teenager yet. And the entire production contained very dark undertones, which made people dislike the movie till this day. To begin with, the plot of this movie was extremely problematic. It focused on the subject of child exploitation, and Brooke plays a child prostitute that works in the red light district of New Orleans. This was already criticized since it would have been a lot safer for Brooke's mental health to cast an older actress to play the role. But everything went ahead as planned, and Shields starred in Pretty Baby, being the youngest person involved by a lot of years. As I mentioned before, Brooke was 13 years old when the film was released, over 40 years ago, meaning that when filming was happening, she wouldn't have even been a teenager yet. Now, in the film, the character that Brooke plays has a love interest who is played by the actor Keith Carradine, who was 29 at the time. I know, guys. This is already looking bad. There were several parts of the film where Brooke was sexualized despite being such a young age. In fact, what's worse is that Brooke and Keith are seen to be very intimate with each other on camera, which leads me and a lot more people to believe that she had been groomed in the process of making the movie.
Perhaps.
I want you to be my lover. Buy me stockings and clothes.
You don't know what you're saying, Violet.
I won't even charge you anything at all. And you can visit me at my house.
This scene was really sexual in nature, and definitely was not something that a 12-year-old should have participated in. And the worst part about this was that Brooke actually appeared fully naked in the film, despite being an extremely young girl. And guys, because of this and the gross sexual themes, she was not allowed to watch Pretty Baby when it came out, even though it was a movie that made her famous. Anyways, if you thought that this movie was the only one where Brooke was groomed in Hollywood, you're wrong. In fact, it was only the start of a long line of controversies involving her age and being sexualized. Only 2 years later, Brooke starred in yet another film that was made to lure creeps into the movie theaters to make money. This film was called Blue Lagoon. And despite being 40 years old now, it remains one of the most controversial films ever made. And here's why.
My heart's beating so fast.
Mine too.
I I'm sure you guys might be wondering what is so problematic about the clip I just showed y'all. On the surface, it seems like any other romantic film, but it becomes seriously creepy when you realize that when this was filmed, Brooke Shields was only 14 years old, and her co-star, Christopher Atkins, was already 18. And it only gets weirder when you discover that Brooke was basically naked for the entire film. However, the director of Blue Lagoon was very careful and covered up the parts of Brooke's body that couldn't legally be shown on film. But at the end of the day, it's still a shock to many how much of Brooke's body was exposed during these films. To be honest, you guys, it seemed really ironic and kind of upsetting that her first film that made her famous was about the exploitation and sexualization of children, and that was the very thing that ended up happening to Brooke herself. After these two films were released and Brooke became older, she became one of the most famous people of the 80s and continued doing interviews and magazine covers. The only problem was, although not playing a character, she still couldn't avoid being sexualized and mistreated. In fact, the real-life cases of Brooke getting exploited got worse after she was hired for a commercial for Calvin Klein. Brooke shot the Calvin Klein ad campaign straight after making Blue Lagoon, and at this time, she still wasn't even 16 years old. Although she wasn't filmed close to being naked like her previous films, the thing that caused so much controversy was in the ad, Shields says,
"You want to know what comes between me and my Calvins? Nothing."
As I'm sure you guys can see, Brooke was yet again being sexualized, but now this time in a commercial that would play all over the world. Millions all over the world would hear a 15-year-old suggest that she wasn't wearing any underwear under her jeans. Now, you're probably thinking that people would start criticizing the directors and producers that were sexualizing a teenage girl, but no. They instead decided to go after Brooke and attack her for choosing this lifestyle. In fact, after some of her suggestive ad campaigns were banned in several countries, Brooke was made to do multiple condescending interviews where she would be grilled on the commercial and why she did it. She later revealed that paparazzi would also constantly follow her around saying things like, "How could you?" in an attempt to shame her for what she was doing. Now, around this time, Brooke gained even more attention, and so she started to become very close with other A-listers in the industry, and one of the most recognizable being none other than Michael Jackson. Michael Jackson first met Brooke when she was 15, and the pair quickly grew very close. They were seen at parties together, and Brooke explained that when she was having trouble with her boyfriends, she would confide in the iconic pop star for advice and support. Although, after a couple years of friendship, things soon took a huge turn, as Michael revealed that he was actually in love with Brooke. He said that he wished that she loved him as much as he loved her. And despite being only ever just friends, the pair were apparently seen dating a lot. Michael had even spoke about wanting to marry Brooke and for both of them to adopt kids together. However, Brooke always said that it wasn't something she wanted and that she was happier being close friends, which obviously took a toll on their relationship. Now, the background to Brooke's controversial way to fame actually came from her mother, Terry Shields, who was behind all of these big decisions. In fact, Brooke's mother had been taking Brooke to work at modeling shoots before she could even walk or talk. Terry was the biggest supporter of Brooke's career, but she also faced a ton of backlash for putting her daughter in films and photo shoots where she would be sexualized at such a young age. Terry kept herself out of the public eye through her daughter's life, and sadly passed away in 2012 due to dementia-related causes. Now, the most surprising part of their mother-daughter relationship was that Brooke never really thought her mother was in the wrong for what she did, and argued back at people who were sending her hate by admitting that Terry was fiercely protective and kept Brooke out of harm of predatory men in Hollywood. I mean, just listen to this interview and how Brooke talked about her mom after her passing.
I mean, this is a ballsy woman who sort of forged ahead and didn't make any apologies ever. She was fabulous. She was larger than life. She was gorgeous. And she was an alcoholic.
And guys, Brooke is now 56 years old with a husband and 2 daughters. And looking back at her past, she only sees positive things about her career as a child star. Anyways, loves, what do you guys think about the experiences that Brooke had to go through though? Do you think it's right for such a young girl to go through all of this? Let me know in the comments, and I'll see y'all next time.